Hey everybody, Rowan here. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today we are doing the hashtag decks I can't pick up. This was a tag that was started by Fairlight Tarot, or Fairlight Tarot. I always get that incorrect. She did a companion one, decks I can't put down, and then came out with the decks I can't pick up. And so today we're going to be getting a little bit negative. We're going to try not to. We're going to try to see the silver lining in all of the decks I'm talking about, even the ones that I don't have in my possession anymore, because there are only 4 of those. There are only 4 decks that I've ever gotten rid of. I try to keep them and make them work for me. So we're going to talk about those as well as these. So let's go ahead and set these aside, and we'll start with the Oracle, the one that's the odd one out. So this is a Yogic Path Oracle by Sahara Rose, artwork by Danielle Noel. It is aesthetically an amazing experience. It's beautiful. I love the size of the cards. I love the card stock. The artwork is beautiful. I edged mine in a matte gold that I need to go over again. I actually recently bought another Sharpie just to do that. Even the inside of the box has detailing. It's beautiful down to every last detail. I don't love the readings that I get from it. Maybe honestly I think it's mostly that I just have not ingrained the information from it somehow. Like, I've been studying the guidebook for a while. I've done dedicated studies in my like on the topics presented. I've done dedicated studies in my grimoire. I've put a fair amount of time and effort into getting to know this deck, but I just don't get great readings with it. And the guidebook is not particularly helpful in that regard because it gets a little bit repetitive. Sahara Rose is a life coach, and it very much so comes across in the way she ties all these ideas together into, ultimately everything ties back to pursuing your dharma. And like, I get that, I guess in some ways everything in life should be all about pursuing your dharma, but sometimes I'm not asking questions like that. Sometimes I'm asking, I have other problems that need to be addressed, and I would like more time spent on the other aspects of my problems than just, oh, you're not in line with your dharma. And that is a bit reductive of me. I would like to be explicitly clear. If you like this deck, if you get something from it, you're probably, quite frankly, just more educated on the topic than I am. You probably have a much easier time extracting value from Miss Sahara Rose's words than I do. Maybe she speaks to something that you need to hear. Maybe that's just it. Maybe this deck just is not for me. But I keep trying to work with it because it's such a beautiful experience. It was the first deck I ever got. I love the artwork. I don't want any of the other Danielle Noel decks, quite frankly. I've thought about getting the Moonchild Shadow or the Akashic edition of the Star Child, or, yeah, Star Child, I think. But I love yoga, and I want to incorporate it into my tarot oracle practice in some way, shape, or form. And I guess that's really what it comes down to, is that I have like this almost childlike desire to marry these two interests with this deck. And maybe that can't happen, but I'm going to keep trying, dang it. So that's a Yogic Path Oracle. The first tarot deck I would like to talk about has this adorable bag that I made it out of this bee comb, honeycomb patterned fabric that I got from the scratch section at Michael's. The deck itself is rebacked in contact paper. and it is the Secrets of Tarot, or the Secret of Tarot. I'm not sure if Secrets is plural or not. This deck, it was a gift. I'm pretty sure this is like a deck that you can buy in like dollar store tarot kits. The cardstock is basically paper. It is so flimsy. Like calling it cardstock is, even with my new backings on them, they're just so floppy. So floppy, so flimsy. I don't hate the artwork. It's nothing special, but something about the aesthetic of it, the texture, the graininess, it's not hated by me. It's not anything special, quite frankly, but because I have it, because it was given to me, I want to make use of it, but I don't like it. I don't like the keywords that are on it. I find that they're very old-fashioned and in a box, like they're the sorts of keywords that are like, young woman of 25 years, travel overland. Like, that's really literal, my friend. So I've tried desperately to bond with this deck. I have edged it in distressed edging. I've rebacked it, obviously. I have sewn it one of the cutest bags in my collection. And I have no use for it. I might turn it into an art project at some point. That's probably the only thing that's left to do with it. I might, honest to God, do some collaging with it or something. That's not a bad idea. So that's where I stand with this deck. I want to pick it up with a pair of scissors. That's my goals. I really don't foresee myself using it unless I'm specifically trying to use this deck and forcing myself. I don't want to, like, I don't want it in my tarot journal. It's so ugly, and I don't want those nasty keywords that don't match what my reading is going to say to be in my tarot journal. Yeah. As much as I don't think the artwork is ugly, I think the borders are downright hideous. I guess it kind of gives me Oblivion on PC vibes, like the menus, but it's not even. I don't know. I can't get down with it. I want to, because it was a gift, and that means a lot to me, and I have put so much effort into it. Like, at this point, it's the sunk cost fallacy kicking in. So, I haven't gotten rid of it yet. I keep it around and keep trying to reach for it. Another one that I struggle with, and I have been very open with struggling this one since I got it, that is the Hush Tarot by Jeremy Hush. This deck I have also edged in a distressed ink. This deck kind of does its own thing. It does not have a particularly helpful guidebook, in my opinion. The artwork is absolutely stunning, but I know very little about birds, and I've been told that if you know a lot about birds and, like, bird lore, not just the science, but also the lore behind the birds, that this deck makes more sense. I think that it is worth keeping around and getting to know. I want to do a more in-depth study with it this upcoming autumn, but I've got plenty of time before then. We're barely kissing spring. So this deck can wait. I will pick it up again in the future. I'm not pushing myself to reach for it anytime soon. I do use it for divine masculine workings, communication with masculine deity energy, but this Lover's card, I don't know if I've gone on this rant yet. This Lover's card frustrates me so much because it is such a beautiful piece of artwork that does not belong in this deck. I would like a deck that is completely devoted to mythological gods and goddesses rather than rotting bits of nature. This just doesn't fit. This card deserves its own deck. It doesn't deserve to be shoehorned into this one. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine, is that card in this deck. What an odd thing to be so hung up over, but here we are. Yeah, I really like this deck. It has some of my favorite cards in it. Not all of them, not a lot of them, but some of them. And I keep it around because the artwork is so dang pretty that I give Jeremy Hush Mister. I'm going to put together a curated deck of my own work and hardly make... I thought about re-recording my babbling, but quite frankly, when the timer of 10 minutes runs out and I'm still going on about petty things that I hold against Jeremy Hush, I think it's time to just let it go and move on. So let's talk about the Phantasm Tarot. This is like the light version of the Hush Tarot, in that the artwork is kind of the problem for me, except there's just too much to get from this artwork. It is very much so in line with the Rider-Waite-Smith, so it's a lot easier for me to read than the Hush Tarot, but it has a lot of fine detail, and sometimes the colors, which are a beautifully chosen, slightly muted pastel, watery color palette, sometimes the colors bleed together in a way that makes them difficult to decipher, and the lack of borders, as much as it allows me to really submerge myself into the world it presents, it also makes it difficult to parse the fine details as separate cards in a spread. This altogether makes it a little bit visually overwhelming, and I have to be in a very specific mood to pull it. It doesn't help that I have given this deck a job, and as such, I have it stuck in my head, I guess, that this deck can only do that one job, and I'm not allowed to use it for any other type of working or communication, and that's simply not true. So I will be pulling for this more this spring. I'm going to force myself to if I have to. I love the reworking of some of the major arcana. She doesn't change the titles of many of them, but like it's Awakening instead of Judgment. That's one of my favorite changes that can be made. It is a beautiful deck of stunningly rendered watercolor that I need to give more love, and that I will absolutely be trying to reach for more this spring, as this one is seasonal where the Hush Tarot is not. So this one especially needs my love as soon as possible. I will be re-edging it. I think I had edged it in a pastel pink and it has faded quite a bit, so I think I'm going to redo that as a bonding exercise with this deck to try to get back in touch with it. So next I want to talk about some decks that are not in my collection that I cannot show you. So we're just going to pretend, ooh, right in here, we're going to pretend together that we can see it and it'll show up, the power of magic. All right, so the first tarot deck that I ever purchased for myself was the Pride Tarot, which is a collaborative tarot deck from US Games. It is a beautiful deck. I love the variety of art styles that I got exposed to through this deck. I love that some of the pieces are made specifically for that deck. I love that it allowed, like when they made it, they allowed each contributor to write their own or contribute their own text for the guidebook. However, this means that the guidebook is really all over the place. This means that the artwork of the deck is really all over the place. It's not cohesive at all. Some of the artwork was not made specifically for the deck and instead was taken out of other decks. For example, there's a random card from the Deviant Moon in that deck. Really threw me off. I mean, like, not because it was from the Deviant Moon, but because that deck has such a specific style that that card just did not fit with the cards that were around it. The guidebook is nearly useless if you're trying to learn tarot, and so is the deck, quite frankly. And that was my problem with it, was that I was learning, and this deck was not good for that task. If I had kept it, maybe I could use it as an advertisement, as like a catalog for deck content creators to support, because it's either people who are LGBTQIA+, or people who fall under the umbrella in family members, or like having relation to being activists for, or otherwise agreeing to work for the deck. So I think it's safe to assume that anyone who contributed content for the deck is at least an ally. So really cool concept. Didn't like the execution for me at that time in my journey, so I gave it to a friend of mine who appreciated it and was able to read with it because they were more well-versed in the tarot than I was. So I only got like, I only started buying decks for myself about a year ago. So I have rapidly accumulated too many decks. Before that, I had the one that my mother had given me, and I tried to learn on that deck, but I did not do a particularly good job, and so I went from studying the tarot to trying to work with a deck that did not match what I had learned, to trying to work with a deck that did not match itself, to the Bianco Nero Tarot, which I actually learned on. Then I got the Neoteric Feminine Tarot. That one is the next one that I want to talk about. I no longer have it in my possession, but not because there was anything wrong with that deck. It's really cute. I had the kind that did not have keywords on it, so it was the borderless version. I loved that deck. I still do. I gave it away to a friend of mine because it is such a good deck for learning. The guidebook is so good for learning that I wanted to pass it on to somebody who I knew was trying to learn the cards and would benefit from it. I had already gone through the guidebook and copied down the information from it that really struck a note with me, or struck a chord with me, I should say. I mean, I'm sure that if I had kept it, I would have been able to turn back to it and glean more insight from it, but there are other books that are available to me, much less small paper books, like normal sized paper books, rather than the little ones, you know, that can provide me that information, and this was such a digestible way to learn it that I just wanted to share that with a friend who was moving away. So that one I cannot pick up because she is hopefully picking it up instead. The next one I want to talk about is an oracle that I got rid of, and I gave it away with the Neoteric Feminine Tarot because I thought this friend would appreciate it where I did not, and that is the Wisdom of Hafiz Oracle. This is very much so a hug deck. It is super supportive. It is very much so make space for what your needs are, but also sometimes you need to like take a shower and do the dishes kind of deck, but it's mostly give yourself a hug. It has a lot of like little snippets of poetry, but I was disappointed that the poetry I do not believe is actually a translation of Hafiz's poetry. It is instead a snippet of poetry inspired by Hafiz's poetry in its original tongue, but it's not a translation, it's like a reimagining. And that was disappointing and frustrating about this deck, and it was also really repetitive, and because I don't like working with the guidebooks, I was going off of the keywords. The keywords were all just too close to each other, and so it was a very repetitive deck, so I passed it along, hoping that my friend who does more oracle style, affirmation style decks, I hope that she gets use out of it where I did not, because the artwork in it is beautiful. Stunning. If I could have kept it just for the artwork, I would have, but I was trying to make room in my collection to bring in some new stuff. The last deck I would like to talk about today is one that I actually recently purchased and then almost immediately returned after flipping through the deck and reading the guidebook and realizing that this was just not a deck for me and I was never going to reach for it, and it was just going to take up space in my collection and make me feel guilty for buying it in the first place. So I returned it to the store, and they now use it as a tester for that deck because they did not have one on the shelf for it before I bought it, and if they had, I wouldn't have bought it in the first place. So now I'm preventing other people from making the same mistake that I did. And that is the Mystical Forest Tarot. This is a beautiful deck. I love the colors. I love the artwork. I wanted to love this deck. I'm not wild about its use of the word shaman, I have to admit that. But moving beyond that literal cultural, little bit of cultural appropriation there, against a basically genocided group of people, moving beyond that, the deck is a story deck in the guidebook, in that each of the major arcana cards takes you through the story of your descent into the jungle, the non-specific South American jungle that spans possibly several countries, And I actually don't know, now that I contemplate it for even half a second, I don't know if there are specific countries mentioned. I did not read the whole guidebook. I flipped through, read several entries, realized that it was a story, and then checked out the minors, realized that that was nothing. Okay, let me get into the minors in a second. Anyways, it's a story deck. I don't like that. I did not want to read the story to get the hang of the guidebook. I did not like its use of the word shaman, and I wanted something a little bit different from the pips. And what I mean by that, this deck has beautiful pip cards. Each one of them has an animal on it, and it has the pips. So it's a quasi-scenic pip deck, because there is a scene of the jungle with an animal, and so it's like you're walking along the path in the jungle and you spot this animal, and then there's the pip card, except that the animal is in no way related to the pips themselves. The artist could have had all of the wands be reptiles, all of the swords be birds, all of the cups be fish, all of the pentacles be mammals. The artist could have easily committed to something like that. They could have given me information about this animal as if I were learning about it as I passed it. The artist and author could have given me literally any reason why those specific animals were chosen to portray those pips, but there was nothing in the guidebook about the animals. It was just the Rider-Waite-Smith definition of, like, the Rider-Waite-Smith meaning of the card based on the imagery of the Rider-Waite-Smith that was not present with the imagery of the cards that I was being given. And so there was a lot of dissonance between the guidebook and the deck itself. It did not give me what I wanted. I don't want to say that the pips were lazy. I will say that the pips perhaps were thoughtless. There doesn't seem to have been much thought put into why the artist chose what they chose for the pips. And if there was, then that's great. But I would have needed that thought to be conveyed to me in order to appreciate the choices that were made. So I did return that deck. I also hated the backs. The backs are these two moons that just, I hated the backs. It looked like it had just been like, let me not trash it. I don't want to get mean, but I did not care for the backs of this deck, so that was another point against it. I was going to have to trim it because I did not like the borders on it. I wanted to really submerge myself in the colors, and I didn't want to do that whole thing. It was a glossy cardstock. It was thick and bouncy, so it shuffled really well. That wasn't the issue. It was everything else. So also, I didn't love the box that it was in. It was a better box than Luminal 11 ones, though. But yeah, that was the Mystical Forest Tarot. So sorry to the Mystical Forest Tarot and to every other deck on this list that I have mentioned. If you were interested in any of these decks, do not let me dissuade you from getting them. Just because they didn't work for me doesn't mean that they won't work for you, and just because they're not working for me now doesn't mean that they won't work for me in the future. There is value in every piece of art that anyone creates, even when it's just the soulless corporate kind, and that value is in the conversation that's had between the artist and the audience member. And so as the audience member, it's my job to contribute to that conversation when I consume art, even if I don't feel like the artist has done a sufficient job at communicating on their end. That's just how I feel about it. I'm going to drink more tea and record another video. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. I love you. Don't forget to comment down below if you have decks that you cannot pick up. You can also do a VR, and if you saw this tag through me, although I doubt you did, but if you did, do not forget to actually credit Fairlight Tarot, because she's the one who came up with the tag, not me. And I'll link her video below. Like this video if you liked. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hang out and talk about decks some more. I promise I get funny sometimes. It doesn't seem like it yet, but I'm saving the good stuff. I'm saving it. Thank you again. I love you again. Mwah! Bye.